Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing and listening audiences in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe. Now here is your host, Carlos Correa.
Welcome to the program. I'm Carlos Correa. As we all know, the New Mexico Legislature is in full swing, and for the 30-day session, lawmakers plan to talk about a variety of different issues, including job growth, taxes, and that controversial law on driver's licenses. I'm pleased to have in the studio today a state representative for District 37, Dr. Terry McMillan. Thank you and welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to be here, Carlos. Thanks for having me.
Before we begin, Governor Susana Martinez recently did her annual State of the State address, and I just wanted to see your reactions to her speech.
I enjoyed her speech very much, and what I appreciated about it was that she laid out her plans for the legislative session and what her agenda is. And she had previously discussed much of this agenda with those of us in the Republican caucus. I think it's an excellent agenda that allows for some increased spending. You know, the last 3 years we've faced cuts in every legislative session dating back to before I was in the legislature. And now we have a little bit of extra money, and we're looking at increasing funding of state departments and employees again. At the same time, she's pledged that she's going to be fairly moderate in those increases and is going to allow for a small business tax cut. And we'll be debating that very aggressively, I'm sure. But I think it's a good plan for our state.
Some of your colleagues gave her negative comments, and people were grading her. She got a couple of C's out there. Why do you think she got so much negativity on her speech?
I'm not sure that I heard the negativity that you're alluding to. And I don't know if you're talking about the quality of the speech or the quality of the political points that she wants to make. I think there are those who would oppose small business tax cuts, and might rather see all the funding that we have available again this year plowed right back into state spending. But I think a more moderate approach is what she's offering, and I agree with it.
So going into this new session, some bad news with House Speaker Lujan, who recently announced he has stage 4 lung cancer. How do you think this will impact the 30-day session, if it will, and the future sessions?
Carlos, I hope it doesn't impact the session. If it impacts the session, that'll be something that would be bad for Speaker Lujan. On either side of the aisle, we have a high regard for Speaker Lujan, and we admire his courage as he has made the announcement that he's battling stage 4 cancer, but that he intends to carry through the session. Behind the scenes, if he were to become ill, there would be a very unseemly battle for the seat. I just hope that he's able to fulfill his duties every day and that he finishes out his career in good fashion. And all the prayers of the legislators are with him, and we hope that he can do that.
We do wish him well. During her State of the State address, Governor Martinez shared some of the financial changes she made last year, as you mentioned earlier, to help improve the budget. Representative McMillan, is it correct to say that New Mexico is finally on the right track?
Well, you'd have to be a little more specific, Carlos, about on the right track in what way. It certainly appears that our economy has made something of a rebound, as reflected in the fact that we have a little bit more revenues, and we can cautiously reverse the process of the last few years of cutbacks. And everyone is glad to be able to do that and is glad to see that. For the long term, are we on the right course? I think Governor Martinez has us turned and headed in the right direction. She's going to have to be firm in her convictions and holding to the course that she sets. And I think over the play of years, as she emphasizes small business and tries to allow for small business tax cuts, promotes a more appropriate regulatory environment for our state, we'll see prosperity. It'll take some time. Perhaps we're just on the front edge of it, and I hope that that's the case.
Now, anywhere you go around the state and even around the country, people can't help stop talking about the economy and what are lawmakers going to do to help improve it. Here in this state, what are some of the things that maybe lawmakers can do to help improve our economy?
One of the things that's in the governor's agenda is this $55 million tax cut for small businesses. And we're talking small businesses, businesses that employ small numbers of employees, which is the dominant type of business in New Mexico. When we allow businesses to keep some of their tax money in their pockets, not only can they have the opportunity to expand, hire another employee, this is the long-term best policy towards prospering our business climate. And that is an environment of lower taxation and an environment of a regulatory environment that allows businesses to predict and lay their plans, and one that doesn't confine them inappropriately. So I am carrying a bill, in fact, that would allow small businesses to take $1,000 credit against their income taxes if they hire a veteran who is recently discharged from the military, particularly those that are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. So this is a piece of legislation that gives incentives to employers, cuts their taxes, and incentivizes them to employ veterans. Also provides a mechanism for our returning veterans to be perhaps near the front of the line in the hiring process. So I think incentivizing is a good way to do this. Cutting taxes to where it's appropriate to do so and allowing some tax relief, and easing the regulatory environment that our businesses in New Mexico operate under. This is the pathway to economic prosperity.
Do you think there's a big fear out there of people who want to start up their businesses? Are they, I guess, is there a challenge for them to open up their business and, keep it successfully open?
Yes, of course. It's a difficult environment. To begin with, it's difficult to obtain the capital that's necessary to get a small business start. And so it's also difficult to maintain a very marginal business. Most small businesses in New Mexico, really the profit margin from the business is what sustains the owner of the business. Margins are slim. And so every little bit of tax incentive or a regulatory change that allows that business to have more room to maneuver and take a little bit more home is ideal.
In her speech, the governor mentioned that we're getting a lot of new jobs here in the state, in Santa Teresa and also in Albuquerque. Do you think we're going to see more of that in this new year?
It's hard to predict. I'd love to say I'm aware of some big announcements of large companies with a lot of jobs coming in. But again, I think New Mexico needs to posture itself to be competitive with surrounding states in terms of incentivizing and bringing in and making opportunities for business. And we did that with Union Pacific. Union Pacific asked specifically that we lower our diesel fuel tax so that they could put their exchange station in southern New Mexico. And the legislature did that, and Governor Martinez signed that. So we must stay alert to those opportunities that allow us to incentivize businesses that would like to come in and hire a lot of employees.
How do you think we can get more businesses to come to our state and to New Mexico and set up shop here?
Well, I mean, I think we've been over that. A more business-friendly climate, which means a tax environment that's not so stiff. In her State of the Union address, the governor alluded to the fact that we are 50th in the nation in terms of business-friendly tax structure. And we're going to have to look at that. In the long term, if New Mexico wants to prosper economically and flourish economically like many of the states around us have, we're going to have to look at our tax structure. And we're going to have to relax it, and we're going to have to at least become competitive with surrounding states in this area.
What would you say to someone who's watching out there who just lost their job, who is trying to figure out where their next meal is going to come from? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, I believe there is. Here's the reality, Carlos, and this goes beyond New Mexico and to our country at large. I think that we are in a long-term difficult period, and it's not difficult just for a certain segment of our culture and our society. As a nation, we're in debt, and we combine that with an economic downturn. And the truth is that I'm afraid that we're in for a difficult but not impossible time ahead. There will be sacrifices that every part of our culture are going to have to make, every part of our society. From those that are employed by government to those that are small businessmen and women, to those that are retired and those that are getting the help of various government programs. We're in for a difficult but not impossible time, and we've been through difficult times before. And the fact is that historically, Americans will tighten their belts, they'll make changes that are necessary, and we will emerge stronger and will flourish. But we're in for a long and difficult time.
So this week, lawmakers went back to work. What's the atmosphere like up there in Santa Fe?
I think as a legislator, this is my freshman legislative term, and so in many ways, Carlos, I feel like I'm reporting back to you from the front, and everything remains to a degree fairly new and fresh to me. And I've reported many times about how I feel about what I've found, and in general, I would report to your viewers and to my constituents, those in the viewing audience, that I'm well impressed with the quality of the people that I'm working with. I'm well impressed with their motivations and intentions and their integrity in particular. I've seen it many times. We hear so much about how corrupt politics is and how corrupt politicians are. And of course, there are many cases where that has been shown and demonstrated and is true. I would just remark that I am pleased with what I find. And I find it possible to work with people from both sides of the aisle. I think all of us on both sides of the aisle have the same long-term goals in mind. We would like to have a happy and prosperous and free people. We disagree in some ways on how to arrive at that destination, but we debate. We debate aggressively and vigorously. At the end of the day, we leave the floor on friendly and respectful terms, and that has been what I've found.
Great. The governor's looking to change part of the education law and empowering the state to hold back third graders who read below that level. She said promoting them would only make them candidates for unsuccessful lives. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is a good piece of legislation, and I want to explain it a little bit, Carlos, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this piece of legislation. I receive a lot of emails about it. The legislation includes funding and programs that begin our elementary students at the kindergarten level, identifying those who are already behind, incorporating into their educational programs remedies and strategies to bring them up to grade level. And this evaluation process and remediation and help is incorporated into their plans from the time they begin kindergarten. At the end of second grade, a test is administered to see if they are at grade level, and if not, these children's parents are notified formally, look, your child is behind, let's get together and make a strategy to bring them up to grade level. Even after third grade, if a child fails any number of measures that may be applied and is not able to read at third grade level, remediation is immediately available in this legislation to address the problem. I can't understand why we would be dishonest with our young children and tell them that everything is fine when we know that in the end, reading skills are the most basic skill that's going to allow them to prosper and succeed. We really must be honest with them, and especially those who come from a poor or otherwise a disadvantaged home or environment. Why should we not offer them the help early that they need, identify that they need the help and offer them early? Evidence suggests that children who don't read at third grade level, when they go to fourth grade, are 4 times more likely to drop out of school later on. They only get farther behind.
What do you say to parents who say that's a little harsh?
Which part is harsh? The honesty? Yes, honesty can be tough. It can. And all of us sometimes need to be told the truth, don't we, in order to prosper? So we understand the argument that, we need to encourage kids. We must not be inappropriately damaging to their self-esteem. But where's the balance? Should we always encourage young people in spite of the reality of the situation? Studies have shown that American students remain #1 in the world in self-esteem, yet they've fallen further and further down the list in their abilities to compete for the good jobs out there. So we just need to push the balance back a little bit in the other direction, I think.
So sometimes the truth hurts, right?
It does.
So why do you think students are falling behind? Is it something that's happening at home? Is it teachers?
What a complex question. Education, and I shouldn't put myself out there as an expert on education. I'm not. All my family are teachers, and I listen to them, and I have many constituents that are teachers. Parents are intensely interested in this issue, and it's complex. I think that all in all, I really cannot put the fault for the difficulties our school systems are encountering in graduating kids that compete with kids around the world. I can't really put it at the door of the teachers, even so much at the door of our school systems. I think that we've entered a period in our culture in the United States, and one that we also suffer from in New Mexico, where education is not valued in the way that it once was. We have so many children coming to school and arriving at school unprepared, physically, emotionally, and otherwise, to learn. I think that our school systems would be a great success if they were presented daily with students who were prepared to learn. Our school systems have become locations where various social services can be delivered and administered. And many of our children do not come from their homes with the motivations and the ability and the readiness to learn. And we will have to unfortunately suffer the consequences of having a generation or two of working people that can't quite compete to relearn the value of education.
Representative McMillan, nearly $500,000 was used to operate that state luxury jet, which was recently sold. The governor wants to use that money to buy first graders books to help encourage them to read with their family and encourage reading. What are your thoughts on that? Should the money be used for that or something else, or will that help?
You know, we have a $5.5 billion budget. So $500,000 is what, a 0.000 whatever percentage of it. Sure, I'm glad that she's saving the money. And I think that that was a frivolous way to spend our state taxpayers' money. Having said that, we're going to be deciding on a huge budget. And do I think that $500,000 should be spent on the books? It's not that important.
Gotcha. Now, there's another law the governor is pushing again this session, and that enables illegal immigrants to obtain New Mexico driver's licenses with proof of identity and residency. And then independent state representative Andy Nunez plans to bring his driver's license bill directly to the full House of Representatives, bypassing the typical committee process. What are your thoughts? Where do you stand on that issue?
Oh, I'm in favor of revoking the law. I think New Mexicans and my constituents are very clear on it. There are exceptions, of course. There are those who feel that we should continue giving these driver's licenses on humanitarian grounds. On the other hand, I think rule of law and common sense dictate that we identify those who are citizens from those who aren't. My constituents are pretty clear. They want to discontinue this process of giving these driver's licenses out. And there are a lot of reasons that we might do that, but one of them begins with the fact that our driver's license is becoming increasingly meaningless around the country, and will continue to do so. We've been guilty as a country and as a state of incentivizing people to come across in violation of our laws. And obviously, this is one more incentive for them to come. We'll give them a driver's license and no questions asked. So yes, I'm in favor of revoking that practice. And we went through this during the 60-day session. It was an unbelievable battle and one in which I learned a lot. As we went along, we found that legislators began to come on our side. And we got the bill passed through the House of Representatives through the very mechanism that you mentioned. We blasted it out of committee. Blasting process is a mechanism that allows the minority opinion to be heard. The majority opinion will always dominate if a bill or issue is sent to a committee in which a majority of members are in one party sit on that committee. So the blasting procedure is one that's there to ensure that issues are heard on the full floor of the House, whether they're a minority position or a majority position. And we executed that maneuver at the last session, pulled the bill out of committee where it had been killed. And we had debate for 2 days on this issue, which I think it deserved. And I think if it's necessary, yes, we'll do it again.
Is 30 days enough to talk about that issue?
Oh, good question. 30 days is enough time for us to pass a budget. And that's the most important thing. And we hope it's enough time, and I hope that we're able to do it in 30 days. I would make this point. Everything behind the budget will fall in priority. And there are many things that will fall by the wayside, Carlos. And I would like to make this point while we're here. Every year, New Mexico legislators must come to terms on a budget. We're mandated, we're required to balance a budget. We're not allowed to go borrow money. And let me make this point. Because of the requirement to balance the budget, we come to terms. Budgetary issues are behind much of the other issues that we debate. Much of the issues we debate have budgetary implications. Because of our requirement at the state level to balance our budget, we are able, and many times must, compromise on some of the major issues that our people and our constituents are interested in. We contrast that to the federal government level, where there is no such requirement to balance the budget. If there's discord or disagreement, well, we'll just borrow the money to implement a program or a statute, and there's no requirement to come to terms. And this is part of the reason that we see our federal government in such a quagmire. There's no requirement to compromise, but at the state level, we must compromise.
Now, there's a bill that's allowing cities, counties, and the governor to declare emergency and temporary ban or restrict the sale of fireworks during dry conditions here in New Mexico. Some lawmakers in her own party call it a bad idea. What are your thoughts or restrictions on fireworks sales?
I've talked to a lot of people about this issue, and I'm gonna be in favor of the ability of the governor to ban fireworks under extreme circumstances. And I've talked to our fire chief, and I've talked to any number of people that operate these businesses. And it is difficult for a family that operates a fireworks business to anticipate, oh my gosh, maybe we better not buy any fireworks this year, it's dry. I understand the difficulties this imposes on them. Having said that, there are conditions in New Mexico where it becomes so dry that areas of the state become a tinderbox. We saw a number of fires last summer that tell us how tragic and devastating can be these fires. Now, none of these were directly linked to fireworks, but if you talk to any firemen or people who deal with these, they scramble around and put out fires during the fireworks season every year. Also, there's a very objective measure that the governor will go by in determining whether or not it will be appropriate to enforce this ban on fireworks, and it's a high bar that has to be crossed in order to make the restriction. So I think it's appropriate, and if it's not amended in some way, I'll probably vote for it.
Are there other bills that you are sponsoring this session that you want to mention?
I'm also sponsoring a memorial which would look into credentialing by hospitals for physicians. Of course, the area of my greatest interest and expertise as a representative is in the area of healthcare and all the aspects of healthcare that affect my constituents. I'd like to take a look, and I've asked I will ask in a memorial to the Legislative Health Committee to look at the mechanism by which hospitals in New Mexico are credentialing physicians. We've had over the years some circumstances that have occurred that have suggested maybe we can improve this process and prevent some situations where some of our patients have been harmed. So we're going to sponsor that. I also have a bill that I'm going to sponsor when it comes to the House from the Senate side that will liberalize our healthcare plans in terms of their ability to distribute adequate volumes of eye drops. Many of our particular elderly patients use eye drops to treat their glaucoma and other eye diseases. And unfortunately, it's imprecise administering these eye drops. We need our managed care companies to distribute enough of those drops so that there's enough left over for wastage and so our patients will have enough to carry them through the end of the prescription. I'll also pick up another veterans bill that'll come over from the side of the Senate. But it's enough for 30 days, I think, that I get and push these bills.
Well, we wish you luck, and we'll be watching from here. Representative McMillan, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Carlos.
And thank you for watching. I'm Carlos Correa. We'll see you next time.
Your Legislators is a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Copyright New Mexico State University Board of Regents.